So I talk to real estate agents all the time who want to build their real estate business, focusing on probate. And, I know when I talk to them, 90% of the time, they're not going to do much. A lot of agents will talk and talk and talk. But one of the people who from the beginning was a doer and really impressed me with his activities and jumping in and getting started and finding some new ways on his own is Stephen Hughes out of Utah. Stephen, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bill.
How long have you been in real estate?
I started in July of 2020 as an agent, so really not that long.
I think I remember your first month. I think you were on the call with all the leads, if I remember correctly. One time I saw you there, I think. Yeah. So you started in 2020 during the pandemic, which I think would be an interesting time to start. When did you start getting interested in probate real estate specifically?
I'm trying to remember exactly how I got into that. It was probably 2021 because some of my way of getting into real estate was unconventional to begin with. I mean, my background is a public school teacher, band director. I have a master's degree in music. I still perform as an extra and substitute musician in Utah Symphony. So I'm like a classical musician.
Wow.
It's like next month I'm playing, they're doing Casablanca, the film, in concert. So I'm playing on that. But around 2019, I was supposed to be in one of the Marine bands. I had won an audition, but I was going to leave Utah and was making a career change, and I was installing real estate signs, that sort of thing, and gotten married, and we were going to leave the state, but then military did not work out because I had an old injury. And but I was around all these real estate agents and brokers, and I really was not exposed to that career. And I was kind of burnt out from teaching, and I just wanted to try it. It wasn't even about money. It was like I wasn't even, I don't know, it wasn't even like I'd watched a TV show. So it was kind of different from most people I'd met. So I thought really differently than people. I did the cold calling thing, like the FSBOs and expireds. But what I found around me is that everyone was doing the same thing. And I just started reading about people who just did really different stuff. And probate was one of the ones that came up just from reading online. I thought, wow, this is really interesting because this is something that's very complicated. I feel like that would bring a lot of value to people and I didn't know anyone doing it in Utah. If there was anyone doing it, it was probably an investor. So that's kind of, and it was sometime in 2021, and that's how I kind of came across the probate mastery stuff with Chad Corbett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you got interested in it as a niche in real estate, and so are you in real estate full time? And if so, what part of probate is your business today?
Yeah, so I am in real estate full time. I'm technically a principal broker, and I own my own brokerage called Hardship Real Estate Inc. I don't have any agents underneath me. I started the brokerage because I really have three areas of business. I do mobile homes without land. We are allowed to post those on our MLS in Utah. We have permission from NAR for whatever reason. It's really interesting. That's a different conversation. I do senior transition housing, which would include probate. And that's probably what a lot of our conversation today will be about, is that senior transition housing and probate. And then I do divorce real estate.
So it's interesting because when you say senior housing, in my mind, probate is more about that whole area of transition, whether it be through court process probate, avoiding probate, through estate planning, the natural cycle of changing through seniors. It's all kind of related. I think some people use the term senior to describe all that. Describe a little bit the senior transitional housing. What's that business look like for you as a real estate broker?
Yeah, so for me, I've gotten to where I don't like saying that I'm like a realtor or like real estate agent, like say real estate professional, or I do say real estate broker because it does carry like a certain degree that, a lot of baby boomers like, or people think it's all encompassing. Really, you're talking about an older generation of people where the house has to be sold for a variety of reasons, whether their health predicates it and they have to move into assisted living or memory care. Some people talk about downsizing and how that is something that comes up a lot. I actually don't see it that much. Mm-hmm. People talk about targeting it. Most people are waiting till the very last minute because of their health, or because of finances. and they move into like maybe a small condo or mobile home. More of them in mobile homes because of finances, but most of the time it's health. They're moving to assisted living or memory care. And unfortunately, there's some that do pass away, and hopefully there's been a trust set up, so then they avoid probate. But there are some that didn't go through that correct process, and they still go through probate court. But I've seen plenty of people who, look into doing probate, but here in Utah, like in many other states, their net worth is less than $100,000, so they don't actually go through the probate process because their net
Right.
worth isn't over 100,000.
Right.
To me, that's what senior transition housing is. I don't really include downsizing in that because, again, downsizing is, to me, more myth than fact. I just don't see it really happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I noticed, in my case, and I live in my neighborhood, not that that's representative, but people would rather stay, the vast majority would rather stay in their home as long as they can and only move out when they have to, whether it be financial or physical reasons. At least that's my experience. There's obviously a niche that moves ahead of time. Maybe financially they cash out their house and it makes sense to move to the retirement community. But, and having had, 4 parents deceased through me and my wife, I've been through that process 4 times, and none of them wanted to leave their house. They all, as much as we as children thought, hey, you might be safer here, or better cared for, closer to us, or whatever. I think you're right. Most people want to stay in the house as long as they can. So you've taken this niche, and describe kind of what you do from a business development. How do you, obviously you can't just sit in your office and wait for listings to walk in the door. You must be doing something that gets people to say, hey, I want to work with you. What is it that you do to generate the business, and specifically the senior transition care business?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had a senior networking meeting this morning. So there's a senior placement agent, and he hosts a meeting once a month, and it's a variety of senior professionals. And one of my buddies, he owns a senior moving company. He presented today, and he's also does estate liquidations. He's actually a member of NASM, so it's like National Association of Senior Move Managers. So he's a member of that. So I attend a lot of networking groups like that. I actually will do the vendor booths at like the Senior Expo in Salt Lake. There's also one in Davis County, which is the county next to mine. I live in a county called Weber. This year, I am going to do the Alzheimer's walks, have a booth there, and it looks like I might actually sponsor a walk. I do postcards with a lot of senior professionals to, basically get referrals. It is a lot of old school networking and marketing, which a lot of people pushed back on me initially. But what I have found is within this space, the industry, and it's not just the consumer, the clientele, but the industry still is that way. And I don't think it's going to change for another 15, 20 years when Gen X moves into it. They're still marketing to those baby boomers and even the silent generation that way, where it's a lot of mail, it's a flyer outside the assisted living and memory care. So my marketing is really to most senior professionals and just old school networking. It is really how it is. And then I'm doing videos through YouTube and some social media. That's really how it's working.
And I hear that from everybody across the country, that this industry is still old school, even when professionals are in their 40s, not 60s or 70s. They have events, and I don't see that changing. I think there's going to be a component of that, and we can find ways to mix those together. So you mentioned that you're doing social media. I know I've seen it. Actually, I've done a deep dive personally. Share with us maybe your strategy on what you're trying to accomplish through your particular YouTube channel, the interviews that I've seen you do.
Yeah. So with the YouTube channel, with the niche areas, specifically the senior niche area, what I kind of found is there's really no information online. And I know the frustration of a couple of the networking people who host some of these networking like luncheons and monthly events is they feel sometimes that the people don't actually network. It's like, oh, they just come there, maybe a couple of people exchange cards, and that's just kind of it. And it's just like part of the reason we get together is to actually learn about each other's businesses on a one-on-one basis. And I was kind of inspired by your interviews, honestly, Bill. I just started thinking, no one's doing really anything with this. there's no videos. And when you Google stuff, it's like you pull up stuff like a place for mom, or, it's the local assisted living, or it's these like national AI written crappy blogs, or, excuse my language, some, stupid 2-minute video someone made 10 years ago. And it just is so cookie cutter. It's just not relevant to my local market. So I said, I'm just going to start interviewing all these local senior professionals, and put it on my YouTube channel, these people who are all in my network. And, we'll put their information below. We'll, try to leave them a Google review. If they have a Facebook business page, leave a review there. I'll take the video and make it into a blog article on my website, really to kind of help prop up their business. And obviously, yeah, it helps prop up my business, but it also helps me learn more about what they do. So it's building my wealth of knowledge within that space. But it's really funny. Instead of me asking for referrals, like there was one interview I did, and it's a guy I really want referrals from. And I didn't even ask him.
Right.
And at the end of the interview, he goes, "So what are you looking for exactly?" He goes, if someone's wanting to list their house or buy it for cash, which one do you really want, Stephen? Like, what type of people do you need from me? And I didn't ask for business. And I just said,
Right.
well, I said, honestly, it just depends on the house and the person. I said, we do both. I said, it's not an either or. It just depends on what that family needs. He goes, oh, I just didn't know which one. But it was just kind of funny. So it's like reciprocal. And I guess it's a strategy, because a lot of people talk about, oh, you have to have the strategy. But for me, it was more like, I just want to learn what they do as a business. I want to give the general public more resources when they Google stuff, because there's just not enough out there.
Right.
And it's a growing industry that just, there's a big need for it, for people to know that these businesses exist. And there's just a lot of myths, within that area. It's like, again, I mean, we talked today about, there was a company that does visits for older folks. And she was talking about, oh, what do you do if someone is living by themselves and it's a really bad situation, and basically trying to get the government to come in and force them into doing things, like talking about guardianship, all this stuff. And there was some stuff said in the meeting that I knew was wrong. And I basically pulled her aside and said, hey, if there's family involved, they have to hire a lawyer and they have to prove mental incompetence and go to court and get guardianship. That's what we're talking about. There is no magic government agency, even with a social worker, that's just going to grant that.
Right.
And just make it happen. Right. And there's no just magic money to give them a house. So there's a lot of just weird myths. Anyways, that probably was a long answer, but hopefully that kind of answered it.
No, I think you did. I think the point of that is these are complicated procedures that require, professional help. And I think sometimes, I can't give, legal advice, but I can give business advice and real estate advice to help people through a very challenging process. And too often people feel empowered on the internet, that they can do things on their own. And it's not quite that simple that you can just, watch a YouTube and do it on your own. You really need, I think, to have some insight and some explanation of how these things operate. And, obviously you do it better if you do it more often. And that's the opportunity that we create for people. So I think you're being a little modest, which is good. I think that's a stage we go through. Obviously you're learning as you're doing this more often. Is there a place you're going to also learn about the real estate factors, or is it more for you now just to understand the clients and their procedures and being there to help them?
When it comes to the real estate factors, obviously studying for the broker's exam was part of that, because the issue I've had on the real estate side is I switched a couple of brokerages in my career because they felt the stuff I was doing was a liability, which is kind of funny. They felt that it was too complicated. And, I was really dissuaded from it, which kind of lit a fire under me. And I just kind of got some heat from it. And I could probably talk more about that, but I'd probably get a little angry, because it does make me angry. Because I know there's longevity in this and it's the right thing to do. because it's these brokerage models where they just want to recruit a bunch of people who give their SOI up and do 2 deals a year, and it's just they really want to fit me in that mold. There's not in my opinion, there's not a lot out there. I mean, it's just like really, I've really done the research here. There is not one real estate agent or broker in this state that does these senior transition transactions or focuses on probate. There's none. Now, there's a few people who have the SRES, but and I don't think that really means anything. Just taking the course doesn't mean anything.
I have people all the time who say to me, well, I got certified in senior, or I got certified in probate like 3 or 4 years ago. And what that means is they took a class and they've done nothing since.
Yeah.
And everything's changed since. I don't want to laugh at them. And I want to be, I work hard to be humble. It is difficult sometimes because people say things that are so silly, as if taking a class for 3 or 4 hours, once in 4 years will make you money. Who would think that's a possible solution, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the designations are mostly just kind of, sometimes there's knowledge in those courses is why I've taken them, because maybe it's like a way to market myself, or there is stuff I didn't know. I mean, that's part of the reason I took Probate Mastery and a couple others, or I've read books. I mean, gosh, there's a couple books I'm not going to pull them down. Like I bought some books on Amazon. So that's a way I've learned some more about stuff in the senior industry, is I do a fair amount of reading, because there's no one really doing it here. Even on the investor side, there's investors who just buy houses, but I couldn't tell you anyone except for one who says that they'll focus on senior transition housing because they went through Philip Vincent's program, who's on your channel, of course, has been on.
And he's done a good job. I like his business. I like the way he presents. It's not quite right up the alley of what I do, but it's peripheral enough, and there's some principles that overlap, and it's offered at a reasonable price. They offer ongoing relationships. I do like Vincent's program, but it's not enough to just take his program 3 years ago and say you're a professional in that field. That just doesn't make sense.
Right. I will say, but yeah, like here, it's just like there's just not that. And kind of like it's like even in the divorce real estate thing. I mean, the call I had before you was like with a lender who's trying to do it. It's like there's some people with those designations, and really, I've dug through all that. There's literally only one person in our state. We have 3.5 million people who live in Utah, and there's one who really only does it and has like the experience and expertise. But that's kind of like on the real estate side how to do it. But in the general, like just knowing more about the senior side, it's also still reading books, talking to people, asking questions.
Yeah.
These networking events, the interviews are part of that too.
Yeah. Well, again, meeting people who are in that space, I think there's no shortcut to that process, right? You have to find some way to meet people and talk to people, and it sounds like you're doing that. So I know that I see you from time to time online at some of the probate events. Do you have a particular strategy on keeping yourself educated? Or do you go to certain ones every week, or you just kind of catch them when you can? Or what's your strategy or thoughts as far as keeping yourself up to date and networking and sharing best practices?
In regards to like the like you're talking about like the online calls, or
however, do you go to events to learn? Not obviously, networking is getting business. Learning is educating yourself and being stronger.
Okay. Yeah. So that's actually really easy. I'll pull it off here. So I'm just in my home office now. I don't go to a different office, but I have a really simple 2-page marketing learning plan that's broken down by month. And these are networking and education events that are tied into my marketing. I mean, that's it's just laid out monthly for me. Because
that's a home run when you do both at the same time. It's like it's a double dip.
Yeah. And that's just because for me, that's how I get my referrals, but I'm also learning at those events and networking. It's all a cart. In terms of like online calls, a lot of stuff's uploaded to YouTube. So if I do miss it, there's a lot of times I'm working in my office, like on paperwork. I just turn on and listen to stuff all the time. If I do jump on the Probate Mastery call you're talking about, I don't have it in my calendar, but I'll get the reminder email. So if I am here, I'll turn it on and listen to it while I'm doing stuff. It just depends on the week I have. Some weeks I'm busier than others. I was just saying this to someone earlier today. It's like, gosh, November and December, I was kind of slower, maybe a little bored. But it's like New Year's happened. Gosh, I've been working 12, 13-hour days. I have been so busy since New Year's.
I'm so tired. I've been working so hard the last couple of weeks, for sure. I am with you on that. I took off a lot of time in December. I earned it. I worked hard and played hard with my family in December and took more vacation time I have in the past. But man, I hit the ground January 2nd, and it's been a run. I'm running station to station to keep up. I've enjoyed our time together, Stephen. It's been a pleasure in that you are, just in my mind, people call me a time where you are when I met you, saying they want to be where you are 2 or 3 years from now. And so what I want to urge anybody watching this, if you're in that boat, is listen to what Steve did, do what he did. Maybe not exactly in the same niche he did it or the same geography he did it, but the same, I think, professional approach of get into action, find a series of activities, do the activities on a regular basis. And if you do the activities, you get the results over time, you get the listings and the closings. So Stephen, thank you so much for sharing with us. I really appreciate you being available.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.